Hi, I'm Alison from Alison's Astrology, and I'm here today to talk to you about the week that begins on the 13th of April 2025 and runs through to the 19th of April 2025. So, as I'm talking to you this morning, we're just coming out of the full moon at 23 degrees Libra, which was opposite Chiron. So the sun was obviously just pretty much conjunct Chiron, very close by. Chiron, the wounded centaur, if you think about the myth. And this was followed just an hour later by Venus going direct. So this happened in Europe in the early hours of the morning. And I spoke about it a bit last week, so you can find that on the previous video if you're interested. I don't want to repeat myself here, but I will say that if you do have planets or angles around 23 degrees of the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, then this Sun, Moon, Chiron, and Mars combination may have been quite painful and difficult. But Chiron can bring healing and release as well as pain. And the message, I strongly feel that the message with this full moon is that there is always loss and there is always hope. So that's something to kind of take forward with you, I think, and a sense of release here. So you can move on. It's about the nature of the human condition with Chiron, acceptance of us as humans here on Earth, and awareness of this draws us closer together as part of that, the human family. So Venus turned direct at 24 degrees Pisces, and she's exalted and powerful in Pisces. So that's great news for anyone with personal planets or angles in Taurus or Libra, which are ruled by Venus. And it might see the end to some of this madness around the financial markets too, because Venus rules those financial markets. So as she turns direct and she's with Saturn, then perhaps there'll be a little bit more stability. So I'm going to share the screen. I'm not going to forget this week. I'm going to do that now. So that you can actually have a look at the chart. There we are. Great. And we'll see Venus here, 24 degrees Pisces, right next to Saturn. And the moon, well, it's moved on a bit because this is for the afternoon, but the sun there was just together with Chiron. So there we go. So it could also, I do feel it could also be positive for women generally, this Venus turning direct, and empower some of the feminine energy in the world, which I do think would be a good thing because I think we've all probably had about enough of the toxic masculinity that's been parading around on the global stage. And that doesn't mean to say there aren't absolutely lovely men too. I'm in no way a man hater. I know lots of them, and lots of them are very lovely. But you know who I mean with the toxic masculinity, I should imagine. But Venus is constrained by the material reality of Saturn beside her, although she's strong. So there is a sense in which we are bounded still in our dreams, in our hopes, in our desires by this material reality, and we have to accept that in some way. And again, it comes back to that idea of Chiron and the human condition. And the fact that, we are here on Earth in bodies and bounded by Saturn. So she will, however, be ruling the sun that's moving into Taurus later this week. So we're heading into a period perhaps more about consolidation, more about fixity, that's for sure, and perhaps away from combat. It has more the sense of a standoff as this week continues. But Venus turning direct, just to focus a little bit more on that, is also good news for our one-to-one relationships, which have been undergoing some changes, I think, during the last few weeks. We may now be seeing our close friends and partners a bit differently. Perhaps we're setting new goals, realizing that our values within those relationships have changed a bit. Our approach to finances might have shifted. Or adjusted perhaps to new circumstances that have come into being over the past few weeks. And if there has been an emphasis on finances in your life, then you have probably made some new decisions about around this too, with the Venus-Saturn conjunction. We're probably starting to feel quite cautious about finances as well. I mean, that's not surprising given what's happening on the global stage. And Venus is slow to get going, as all planets are when they station and turn either direct or retrograde. So if you do have planets or angles around 24 degrees Pisces, I will say just enjoy this sense of connectedness and appreciation of the love and beauty in the world that this is going to bring. And then early on Wednesday morning, Mercury, the planet of communication, continues its onward journey by moving back into Aries. Remember, he's been retrograde for a while, turned direct in Pisces, and is now back in Aries, where, of course, he immediately conjuncts Neptune. So Neptune is, of course, about our dreams, our ideals, but it's also a sense of boundlessness, a sense of all possibilities. It's and it can be confusing. It can be a bit like kind of stepping into a cloud, Neptune. But it might make us bolder then about expressing our ideals and opinions and vocalizing our dreams as we get this coming together of Mercury and Neptune. But it could also mean that we lack some focus and thought in our communication. It might also mean that we actually can't stop talking. So that's another possibility. So pay attention there. Try and kind of rein yourself in if you sense that you just sometimes you know that feeling when you just actually can't stop. And all this will be coloured by Mars, which is still in Cancer, but ruling Aries now from 29 degrees, that anaretic degree of Cancer. So intensely self-protective Mars, resisting any kind of movement, clinging on almost with a sense of desperation to some sense of how things were or some sense of just the past, perhaps. Yeah, and not happy in Cancer really, especially that last degree, you know, kind of trying to move sideways, move towards goals, kind of hanging on to things. And then early on Friday morning, and that's Friday is the 18th of April, Mars moves into Leo. And Mars in Leo is all about individual self-expression. And generally, we'll be feeling more optimistic and outgoing because Leo is a positive yang sign. Mars, Cancer, of course, is yin, and a feminine sign, so more receptive, whereas Mars is kind of bolder, more kind of out there. So in Leo, Mars is immediately going to make a flowing aspect to Neptune, that Neptune in Aries, and tune into collective ideals and dreams. And let's just have a look at this in the chart to see how that's actually moving forward. So here we've actually got Mercury making a trine to Mars there, and that's on the 15th, on Tuesday. So facilitating perhaps talk, communication, that would be around perhaps tribal issues, around emotion, around feeling. And then they both move into fire signs. First of all, that Mercury just moving into conjunction with Neptune there. That's on Wednesday. And then we have Mars moving into Leo on Friday. So there we go. And by that time, actually, Mercury has moved on a little bit because they had their kind of aspect together that perfected while they were both in the water signs. So so now we've basically got Mars making that lovely flowing trine there to Neptune. Okay, so Mars into Leo, there's a sense as well of it's beginning to confront Pluto now, remember, because because oppositions like this are much stronger once they're actually in opposite signs. So whilst Mars was in Cancer, okay, technically it was an opposition, but it wasn't really the full-on opposition. So as soon as Mars moves into Leo, we have the full kind of force of that opposition coming into play. And this is the third opposition between Mars and Pluto during this Mars cycle, the 2-year Mars cycle, because of Mars's retrograde back through Cancer. So this is the last of the 3 passes, and the other 2 were early November. That was the first one when Pluto was actually still in the final degree of Capricorn, so Mars would have been in Cancer then. So that was a kind of different vibe, the earth-water vibe. And then the second one, the retrograde pass, while Mars was in Leo still, that was early January. And now we get this final opposition with Mars direct in Leo. So if there's anything that's been playing out for you during this period between around November the 8th and kind of now and next week when this opposition perfects, you could discover that actually this is leaving your life now, or there's, oh, sorry, some conclusion has been reached. So because that's what happens, you know, you get, when you get these 3 passes, you get the different sort of cycles playing out. The cycle plays out and the story kind of builds until you have a sense of release with it. So when Mars does confront Pluto, he will actually be ruled by the Sun, which will be freshly into Taurus. And this is the last important shift of this week. And it happens around 9 p.m. in the UK, so an hour later in Europe, on Saturday, the 19th of April. So in Taurus, which is a feminine sign, more receptive, fixed, then the Sun is solid and financially canny. So this is a more solid Sun, you know. It's not the Aries go out to, I'm not very coherent today, sorry. Go all out to get what you want sign. This is the Sun in probably the most grounded of all the zodiac signs. In Taurus, the Sun is interested, everything is interested in Taurus, in holding on to what it has in the material world. Okay, so people born under this sign are usually, unless there's some other stuff in their charts that's playing out, sensual, sensible, loyal, reliable, often beautiful because it's Venus ruled. They have a sense of rhythm and music, so quite often beautiful voices because Taurus rules the throat. And Taurus holds its ground, you know, the symbol is the bull. It holds its ground and it finishes what it begins. It knows the value of security and it knows the value of the world that we live in. And these are important things. It's very hard to persuade Taurus to change, but they do make fantastic friends. Really the people that you want to have your back. And Taurus at the moment is ruled by Venus in Pisces. So it still has an idealistic and sensitive kind of undercurrent to it, perhaps more so than usual. And Venus is making a positive aspect to Uranus, still in Taurus, in the realm of in the same realm of land, finances, and also as well, Uranus in Taurus is about how science impacts these things, the planet, and our bodies as well. So, you know, if you're having things to do with your body, operations, anything like that, this is actually a really nice aspect for that. However, there is this standoff or challenge of some kind coming as the Sun is moving into a T-square with Mars and Pluto. But it probably isn't going to come to a head until next week when these aspects actually perfect. So if you have planets or angles in the early degrees of the fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius, you're going to be very aware of this energy, I think, which is there's kind of a lot of energy, a lot of powerful energy, which is very determined and just, it might feel like something's about to explode. That's basically it. So that's about it for this week. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next week when we discuss the challenging Mars-Pluto energy in more depth. Okay, thanks for joining me. And please don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check out my other videos in the notes below. And let me just stop sharing the screen now. That's great. So I can say cheerio. Bye-bye.